right, hi guys, my name is Alex Murphy. I am actually an ambassador of SameYou and a stroke survivor. And I just want to thank you all of our amazing supporters and partners for joining us today. Today is an amazing day. We're celebrating all of SameYou's achievements in the last 4 years and discussing our plans for the future. We'll be introducing some of our key partners who are running our major research and training programs, and also highlighting our 4 pillars of self-help that support and provide resources to survivors. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat or the Q&A filter, and we'll try to answer them at the end if time permits, and also maybe throughout the show. But I'm really happy to introduce you guys to our co-founder and SameYou CEO, Jenny Clark, because she has lots of exciting updating things to tell us about. Jenny, hello.
Hi Alex. Hi everybody.
How you doing?
Doing well. Thank you.
Good. I want you to tell us about everything exciting that SameYou has going on right now. There's so much, I know.
Well, that's great. And I think we're still waiting for quite a few people to join, but I think that's not a problem. We are recording this session, so we just want to make sure that everybody is okay with that. And what I wanted to say is that you are going to hear from some of our major partners in the next hour. And we're very grateful that they've given up their time from their clinical and research work to be with us to explain some of the work that they've done in the last few years since SameYou has been able to get started, decide what we would need to do to try and contribute to improve recovery for people after they've suffered an acquired brain injury. But what I just wanted to do was to give you a bit of a flavor of some of the things that are upcoming. So I won't take too long about that, because we're also going to talk about some of the services that SameYou have developed, and in quite a small way, but as a balance to the very big projects that we've actually achieved so far. So one of our guests is Louise Connell, and she'll be on a bit later on. And I want to ask Louise to give us the really exciting news that she's been working on for our neuro rehabilitation online. And I'm going to ask her to talk about it, but it is really big news, and it's something that we in the small team here at SameYou are incredibly proud to have started and to have supported all the way through the last couple of years. But I also wanted to say that we have 3 projects that we are putting a lot of work behind to take over from some of the projects that you already know about. So the first one is, as I've already mentioned, NROL, Neuro Rehabilitation Online. What we've seen is that many other National Health Trust boards are keen to understand what this very particular group therapy does. And there is a lot of interest. And so what we're doing at SameYou is figuring out how we can support UK hospitals in terms of communicating the values of SameYou and NROL, and how they are designed to give people an additional neuro rehabilitation service. It's not meant to do anything other than add the service, which I think is so needed. So we're going to work with new people, and we've currently started working with many health boards in Wales, and they have got a devolved situation from the UK, from the English US NHS, and so we are working and seeing how we can support and introduce NROL into Wales. So that's one very big project. The second one is we are co-developing a new mental health pathway. We're co-developing it with a major London hospital and wonderful clinicians and researchers. And so we decided that after listening to everybody who's written to us and spoken to us, and in the long 4 years since we started, when Amelia told her story to the New Yorker to explain that she'd had her 2 major brain hemorrhages, and she was so grateful for surviving so well, but also deeply concerned that so many people just aren't able to access neuro rehabilitation. And so we just figured that we maybe by talking about it and really spreading the word, we might have some small contribution to change that situation, so more people can have the ability to really get themselves back and feel just the same as they were before, even though, of course, many people have significant problems that they have to have encouragement and help to overcome. So we sort of figured that lots of wonderful charities and hospitals throughout the world are working towards this. So what could we do? Because as you all know, we're not clinical, we're not charity experts, but we have got the lived experience. And Alex, meeting you was really inspirational for us because you've got your own story.
I think every survivor has their own story. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that I love about SameYou is that it's almost advocating for people to share their stories as well.
Indeed, exactly. And so most of the stories that people have sent in to us and keep on telling us about really go through obviously many problems, but what we saw and realized is that the emotional recovery issues are really underserved more than all the other things, whether that's speech and language or physical disabilities or whatever it might be, which are also underserved because there just aren't enough resources and not enough focus. The actual areas that you really do need encouragement and love and support, well, you could put under the grouping of mental health. When we started talking about it, all of the clinicians we talked to, the clinical specialists said, you know, emotional recovery. And when I was talking to people to try and see how we could get philanthropists to support our work, people didn't really quite understand what emotional recovery was. As soon as I clocked on the idea that calling it the problems under the catch-all of mental health problems, people seem to understand it more. Alex, do you think did you see that anywhere in your experience?
I do think, you know, obviously physical outward effects are the most predominant thing that we're focused on after you've had a traumatic brain injury. But there's so much that does go undetected and unnoticed. And I think that people, I know myself included, slip into a slide of depression, and that is that emotional side of it that isn't getting the nurturing to be brought to light, I guess. So I think that what we're doing with SameYou is hopefully going to remind people that that also is a factor in your recovery. And yes, using the mental health umbrella, of course, definitely makes people perk up and go, oh, okay, well, that makes a little bit of sense, because these are all mental health issues, whether it's depression or anxiety after your stroke, or just anything that you're feeling that isn't an outward effect. I always call it an invisible disease. Yes. Whatever you have that you're suffering with, it's really not well diagnosed and not well, I guess, just featured in the recovery process.
Absolutely. No, exactly. So we are working with the major London hospital and research team, and we are taking cues from other disease states where we can see that mental health and emotional recovery is fundamental to people being able to recover other functionalities. That hopefully is going to start in the next couple of months, and that's going to be a very long ongoing project, but I think something that we're all incredibly excited about. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, and when we have our next webinar, when we are talking mainly to our US audience and supporters and followers, we have got some good news that we've started to work with the wonderful team at Mount Sinai in New York. And particularly led by David Petrino, we are looking at how we combine forces, and again, focusing on mental health issues, how we can work together and develop solutions with Mount Sinai, whether that's an app or whether that's more of a buddy type program. We haven't quite bottomed out yet, but it'll be one or the other. And so I'm really excited that we'll be able to help support Mount Sinai in getting more patients and survivors and their families looked after in the New York, New Jersey area. So that's really big for us.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And also, Jenny, since this is our happy birthday, I guess you could say, our
Yeah.
anniversary birthday. Do you want to just talk everybody through the 4 pillars of SameYou and what our like key things are?
Absolutely, yeah. So just again, a quick backtrack. When we started the charity, Amelia and I wanted to do something. So we were able to raise money and to support leading clinicians around the world. And you'll hear from some of them today on their major projects. But because we got such interest from people, we felt that we also had to provide some sort of solutions that we were able to do. And so our first one, we call it the 4 pillars, but the first one is our portraits. And so we've already mentioned it, that it's so important for people to be able to feel heard and to have their stories heard, because it's just difficult enough coping with your day-to-day life. And then when people actually don't really understand what you've gone through. And many people think that brain injury is a sudden catastrophic, I suppose, experience, which it is, but people don't really understand that afterwards it becomes a chronic condition. So that's really, really difficult. And I've heard some really difficult stories from people whose close family members haven't even understood that they do need a lot of time to recover. And so what we have is a team of volunteers. So SameYou could not exist without our volunteers. And we do have a large number of them, and they help us in the very basic support systems that we can offer. But they actually aren't basic. They are wonderful connections to people who write to us. So we have a portrait team of 3 people who answer letters and answer emails and correspond. And we have a format for asking people, if they want to actually tell their story and to submit some photographs of themselves. And so that is a program, and it is very successful. And I'm going to say, people, please, if you're waiting for your story to be published, bear with us. We're a very small team, and we're trying to do it as fast as we possibly can. But there is a process, and we need to go through that process. So portraits is really, really important. And we just know that people, whether they're carers, whether they're patients, whether they are people who might be friends, really can get a lot of benefit from telling their story. So the second pillar we call recovery at home. And again, it's because there simply isn't enough community services, either in the UK or the US. And we see that there is a very big gap. And so what we did is we started to ask some of the clinical teams that we work with if they would just donate videos that they've done themselves. So we don't have too many at the moment, but we have quite a number that covers a range of different sorts of issues. And so we're going to, in the next 12 months, be putting more emphasis on developing more of these videos to help people self-help at home. So we hope that's going to be very useful. It gets more useful. The third pillar is our directory. And so we have a neuro recovery directory, which focuses on the UK at the moment. And what it does is that we have spent time asking different charities and organizations what services they have to offer and where they might be. So we've developed a small map, and you can put your postcode in and to see if there is a service run by a charity or a similar organization close to you. And we have that. And we're very excited that we've been working with University of San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco, and we have there a very large list of post-acute, post-hospital recovery services in the community. So that will be coming onto the map very soon. So that is just the start of our outreach again into the States, starting with San Francisco, the Bay Area, and then moving through various areas, and especially New York as well. So that's another one. And then the last one is really, really special, because we have developed really strong relationships with people over the last 4 years. And we have a group of people who have gone through recovery, and we've seen how they have grown and gone through their journey, however difficult and traumatic it might be. And they have, with the support of a wonderful organization called Spaulding Rehab, they've been working with us to do a buddy pilot. And that means the people who we know with various ABI issues have volunteered their time to work with Sphere to understand all of the issues that they would need to know when advising and coaching somebody. And so it's peer-to-peer. They're not specialists, they are patients and survivors. And so we've got 10 newly recovered people on their early journey of recovery, early stages. And so these people are getting together on a regular basis and helping each other, because that's what happens. If you help somebody, you actually feel better yourself.
Yes, it's genius. It's you know, to be honest, I think that that's probably the most cathartic thing that SameYou is doing right now. Connecting people to people is going to make a massive, massive impact on someone's recovery, especially a newly injured person.
Well, you know what our real big aim is, and I have to admit very honestly, we don't really know how to do it. What we really want to do is to
We'll figure it out.
build a community. We really want to have as many supporters to join up together to help each other and to really tell the world that this is an area that's so vital and so neglected. 1 in 3 people will have a brain injury at some point in their lives. I mean, it's astounding the huge amount of people that is. And there just isn't enough support. So there has to be some sort of an urgent community way of making that difference. So we're working on it. But any of you out there, if you know cleverer people than us, and I'm sure there are many, many, many people who are caring about this problem and know about this problem, let's collaborate, let's get together, let's all join up and see.
Sometimes it's just about connecting people on things like this, where someone will come on and see this and tell their cousin who knew someone, and that's how we're going to hopefully change the whole world, change the medical profession.
Hopefully, we're on it. We're on it.
Exactly. Oh, thank you, Jenny. So thank you, Jenny, for walking us through the 4 pillars, for explaining what we have going on. Now the exciting part as well, we're going to connect you guys with some of our key partners. So SameYou is funding a groundbreaking 3-year study into the, I'm going to say this wrong, the biopsychosocial impact of brain injury with Spaulding Rehabilitation. And this is so near and dear to me because Spaulding is actually in Boston, Massachusetts. So I've known of this rehabilitation center for ages, and this is just so exciting for SameYou to be working with them. They are a world leader in advanced rehabilitation treatment and research, and the official teaching hospital for Harvard Medical School's Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation. So today on the call, we have Dr. Ginger Pollock, who's going to discuss more about our partnership in this 3-year study. Are you here, Dr. Pollock?
Yes. Yes,
I am here. Yes.
Where is she?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for the invitation for us to speak on behalf of our progress today.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. We just want you to fill us in. Can you tell us the methodology behind your research and the objectives of everything that you're doing right now?
So we're a multidisciplinary team. I'm a rehab physician. We also have neuropsychology, physical therapy, and psychology on our team. And we're really trying to understand kind of like a multimodal understanding of what is resiliency after acquired brain injury. So we have a lot of clinical experience between our group and a lot of research experience. And over the years, we've seen many people who have brain injuries, and some do very well and some don't do well. So we're really trying to understand all the different factors that might be involved. Is it something biological? Is it something about your genes that might make how your neurons recover different than how someone else's neurons recover? Is it something about your psychology, how you were raised, your coping mechanisms that make a difference? Is it about the social support you have or the resources you can access? So there's all these different kind of ways or lenses to look at this. So methodologically, we have a few different components to our project. The first is a qualitative component. And here we're really trying to operationalize and define resiliency after brain injury. And so for this, we've reviewed a lot of literature on what is resiliency at large for other conditions, and then set across to try to define it specifically again for ABI. So we've had a series of focus groups with individuals, representative sample across the ages, but really trying to get a lot of perspectives from young people as well. Who came in and sat together, shared their experiences and answered questions about what was really difficult for you in your recovery, what seemed to really help, and what were the obstacles or barriers that you were unable to overcome and you wish were out there in terms of resources and the like. So based on that, we coded all those interviews and started developing our first pass of an interview. And the goal here is to eventually actually make like a psychometric that can help us, that can be used widely for others in terms of understanding what kind of factors they have or they don't have to support their recovery. So that's project number one. Project number two. So this is looking at patients who are injured and between 3 and 12 months post-injury. So this is a very, for people who have gone through this, very critical time period of recovery where there's a lot of different factors involved. So we're inviting those individuals to come into our labs, and we're doing a large psychometric battery. Again, looking how are they doing from a mood perspective, from anxiety, from depression perspective, how are they doing from a stress perspective, how are they doing from a coping perspective, what is their functional outcomes, how are they doing overall from returning to work or not returning to work, and in terms of their social life. Then we have a biological component where we're doing blood-based biomarkers, and this includes looking at DNA and looking at plasma proteins. And here specifically, we're looking at different markers of neural injury and neural recovery, how different bodies are in terms of responding to stress, inflammation. We're looking at growth factors, including those involved in neuroplasticity, and a variety of neurotransmitters that are involved in mood regulation. So that's component two. So again, the psychometrics plus the blood-based biomarkers. The third part will be the final part, but here we're trying to look at, again, that question of what makes this difference between people who recover very well and people who have a much more difficult time recovering. So we're looking at extremophiles, so the people who do the best and the people have the most difficulty with recovery, and bringing those people back into our lab and doing some functional neuroimaging to actually look at the brain circuitry of what is different between these groups. So that's those are the kind of like the big picture look at what we're doing.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot. So this is incredible. So what is the status of the project though right now? Is everything ongoing? Is it's every day? It's yeah.
Yeah, we're moving. So the first component regarding the qualitative piece, the focus groups are all done. We've made the first pass of the resiliency interview. We're now kind of testing it in a second cohort of individuals to refine our items. Our groups published a metasynthesis of the data at large for resiliency after acquired brain injury. So we're making very good progress there. We've also started working on a fact sheet for the public that can just help quickly with bullet points inform about what we've found so far and what someone with a brain injury might want to be looking for and asking for amongst their care team. So that's kind of section one. Section two, we've been fully open to recruiting for a few months. We've had our target goal is 150 participants for the blood-based biomarkers and the psychometric. So it's been open for a couple months. I think we've had like 3 patients that are, kind of fully gone through everything. We have a number of others in the queue. But we first wanted to develop the resiliency interview because we're using that for these individuals with the physical profile. So each project kind of informs the next. So after we're done with all of section 2, then we look at extremophiles and start doing some of the brain imaging. So we're in it, we're moving. And it's just, takes time, of course.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. It's going to take time, but it's amazing to hear that all this is going on. Another question I had for you is Spaulding has a very strong multi-generational team, research team. So what has the new learning that your young investigators have brought to this program aimed for young adults? Has it been anything different after the time that you guys have been working on this?
So I think I can answer that in a couple different ways. I can speak both in terms of process and content. So I'm going to start with process, and this might seem like something minor, but I think this is actually very significant and important. So we opened recruiting just a few months ago, and we have, again, multi-generational group, including some of our research assistants are just, a few years out of college or in graduate studies. So we started recruiting, and we're coming out of a pandemic. Recruiting is difficult. There's a lot of challenges and barriers. And in the first month or so, our team noticed that we were getting much better callbacks from people who were older, and we weren't getting callbacks from any of the subjects we were recruiting that were younger. And one of our research assistants made the comment that, again, people who are younger aren't answering their phones these days. You know, you need to be texting.
Very
And this is
true.
something so basic, but like to identify that early on versus months later actually makes a difference from how a project works. And from a research perspective, there's so much kind of, you know, bureaucracy and red tape you have to go through. You can't just boom, now I'm going to go, you know, text individuals and subjects. You have to get permission and go through a lot of the kind of the formal process. So we're working on that. So that's a very small example, but in terms of research operations, those things matter because that, you know, that can like really put you back or change the demographics of who you're reaching. From a content level, I would say there's times have changed, right? Where mental health, there's a lot of effort to try to destigmatize, right? That's absolutely a work in progress. And that's part of what I understand SameYou is trying to do and work on. It's better than it was. There's still a lot of work to be done. But I would say that the kind of openness with speaking about this in terms of one's own mental health journey, one's own mental health experience, and pursuit of wellness in terms of just kind of the colloquial norm of meditating or, you know, doing yoga these days has really made a difference in terms of some of our research staff being able to connect to some of our participants, especially like in the focus groups. I think just kind of having that lived experience of what does it mean to think about mental health and wellness these days really informed kind of the depth in which we could go into some of those topics. So I think it's been a very positive aspect.
To have some younger new faces in.
Absolutely. Yes.
I was going to say, I never answer my phone. I can tell you that for sure.
Okay.
And I'm sure you don't either.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Paula, for joining us. That is such great news to hear. I'm so glad to hear that there's a little Boston home of SameYou out there in America. And that just makes me so happy to hear. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for updating all of us about all of your work and for explaining it to us like in a way that it really makes us survivors feel like we can understand it. So thank you so much.
Very good. And thank you for, I mean, to SameYou and for your support. Again, obviously we could not be doing any of this without everyone. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, guys, so up next joining us will be Louise Connell from the University of Central Lancashire, which I love to call the wrong name, from UCLan, and Adam Partington from the East Lancashire Hospitals Trust. You have heard a lot about NROL today. That stands for Neuro Rehabilitation Online, that SameYou launched with UCL in London during the COVID lockdown. These results showed everyone how these group therapy sessions work well, and the team developed a systematic approach for this type of recovery innovation. Louise and her colleagues have extended this first pilot, and they're here to give you some of the insights. And this is such an amazing program. I can't wait for you guys to hear about this. So Louise and Adam, are you guys here? Are they in here? Oh no, are we not in here yet?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, there he is. Hi, Adam.
Sorry, I was struggling to get on. And I think Louise is just trying to get internet connections because she's mid-journey somewhere.
Oh, well, you sound lovely. We can hear you. How are you?
Perfect. I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, thanks so much for coming on. Oh, okay. So can you really quickly, I won't take up too much of your time, but can you give us the background on why you wanted to start the NROL pilot in your area?
So obviously we knew following the pandemic that patients probably weren't receiving as much therapy as they could have been. And I think pre-pandemic, we knew we weren't probably reaching the guidelines that we should have been in terms of patient contact, activity, and that sort of thing. So we thought it would be a really good idea to kind of get involved. Personally, I'd already speaking with sort of Ben and Catherine, who were running the original NROL during the lockdown for UCL. So I knew a little bit about it. I knew I wanted to start, as a physiotherapist, wanted to start some exercise groups. And I thought it was a good way to kind of get the ball rolling. A lot of the MDT involved really wanted to get involved with the other groups as well. So it sounded like an ideal opportunity, really. And obviously the funding to do that really to kind of excelled it for ourselves. As you know, probably the NHS is very strapped in terms of money to support things. So it was really helpful to get things started.
Yeah, amazing. And what are the key survivor benefits you found after your trial in East Lancashire?
So yeah, there were lots of benefits. Obviously, one of the main things was that we were able to provide sort of more therapy on top of their current therapy. So like you said before, it wasn't to replace anything, it was an addition to what they were receiving. I think a lot of the other things, and what we found, it did complement it very well as well. So it's complementing sort of their face-to-face input alongside some of the online stuff really works quite nicely. Obviously, from the patient perspective, they really enjoyed it. They really liked kind of that social environment, like you said, that peer support, being able to share their experiences and being able to speak to people that have gone through similar experiences. but also give each other like little tips about how they managed through different situations. So yeah, all them things and more. And I'll describe a little bit more in terms of like the data we've collected and kind of some of the information afterwards with the couple of slides we've got as well.
Oh, absolutely. Do you feel like, I mean, just from what you're saying, I can tell that there probably is so much benefit for that group community, just even
Yes,
mentally,
definitely.
physically,
And
everything.
I think a lot of the feedback we had from the original pilot sort of during lockdown for UCL, kind of was the main theme that was coming from that. And obviously it's grown and grown through our service and kind of obviously the therapeutic benefits as well. Now we're able to see that more by some of the measures we're looking at in terms of function and cognition and different things and how that's improved things as well.
Oh, amazing. Do you want to outline the scope of the whole program that SameYou and the National Lottery Fund or National Lottery Fund have funded? Yeah.
Yeah, so initially 2021, we started the initial sort of rollout of NROL. So that was kind of the first year was kind of just single trust. So it was just East Lancashire NHS Trust. So we got our own therapists to run sessions, and we had the additional funding supported some IT support, some admin support, and some sort of project lead and links with University of Central Lancashire as well. So that kind of set us up for the first year. So we set up all our different groups, and then we ran sort of several blocks over the first year. And then with the additional funding, then we started to say, right, well, can we expand this bigger? So the next chance was there. We'd try and bring it across the whole of Lancashire, what we call our integrated care system across Lancashire. So we've now got other trusts involved, including Morecambe and Lancaster, Blackpool, Lancashire, South Cumbria, and obviously still ourselves as well. So their therapists are now getting involved with sessions as well. So we've been running that since April last year. We were kind of working more collaboratively, and it's continued to kind of expand. Obviously, our long-term goal is that it's going to become something that's an ongoing provision through the NHS. So we don't need extra funding, and we can get it funded officially as such. And luckily, we've had a little bit of additional funding for the next 12 months. And myself, I've been put into the project lead role going forward to try and kind of help with the more admin side of it, getting the patients' referrals in, trying to make it run as smoothly as we can so that the therapists running the sessions can just get there, do the sessions and get the benefits for the patients.
Oh, amazing. Did you want to show the slides that you wanted to show us? I don't know if Louise has made it in here yet. So do you want to show us those? So
yeah, just a little bit of an overview really of the program. So obviously, like I said before, we're working across the region. It's online neurorehabilitation. One of the main things we found is kind of that dedicated technical logical assistance. So we have a designated IT support that sets all the patients up on Teams, gets them logged onto the computer, shows them how to put the camera on and works through that, because we know there is a lot of patients that may struggle with them things generally, but also on top of the brain injury might make things a little bit more complicated for them. So that's definitely an essential part of one of the things we do. Obviously, we try and tailor the groups to the patient's needs. So each block we runs for 6 weeks. And then each time we get the referrals in, we'll look at the referrals and we'll try and think, right, well, this block we might need to kind of introduce a different group, or we might need to kind of change the group slightly, or the format of the group to kind of fit the patient's needs of that group that's running that block. Obviously, like I said before, peer support is one of the big things that's come through. And obviously that complement to the sort of face-to-face therapy that we're receiving at the minute. So yeah, definitely brilliant. Right, move to the next slide, please. Yeah, and then obviously just some of the data really, just so you get a bit of an idea of how big the project has become. So up to date, over the last 2 years, we've had 220 plus patients through the service, which is totaled out in sort of 482 sessions, 13 different NROL blocks, so that's 6-week blocks, 2,477 patient contacts, and 13 different groups we've been running. So I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of the groups we run. So currently the last block's just finished, it finishes tomorrow. And this block we've had, I think, 6 or 7 different groups. So I'll run through the week. So on a Tuesday, we have the exercise group, which is one of the sessions that I've kind of set up and run. And that involves sort of balance exercise online. We've also then got the Living Well group, which is a psychology-led session that talks to patients through managing post sort of brain injury and kind of that acceptance and then moving forwards and how they're going to kind of progress forwards following that brain injury. We've also got a cognitive rehab group that looks at cognition, memory, and different strategies to kind of manage that. We have an upper limb group that focuses on upper limb rehabilitation. We have a fatigue management group that looks at around fatigue, sleeping, ways to manage physical, but also sort of cognitive and other types of fatigue as well. We've got some speech therapy groups. So we've got one called Simply Speaking. We've got one called Tip of the Tongue. So I came up with a couple of names, just as ways to kind of, so some of them were looking at kind of dysarthria, other things we're looking at dysphasia to kind of manage that. And then we've got, I'm trying to think if there's any others. I don't, there's, yeah, and then on the Friday there's Cafe NROL, which is the big patient session, and that's kind of our best attended session as such. So that's where patients can kind of really kind of communicate with one another, but also we had the extra bits of sort of education in there around exercise, around sleeping, around kind of general topics that tend to be picked by the patients really to see what things they're interested in, what they want to know. In previous spots we had sort of other sort of guest speakers from like consultants, so they can ask questions, or therapists if they wanted to ask specific questions as well. So it's been really good. Like I say, we're getting positive patient outcomes, we're getting really good patient feedback. Louise is currently kind of through the processes of getting an abstract out there and getting a piece of literature out there so that it can kind of show kind of the quality of life improvements we're getting, some of the measures that we're getting and some of the results we're getting from that. And obviously for the patients, a lot of the reports are it's saving them time, so they're not having to get out of the house to get to appointments and having to book time off work and them sort of things. It's a lot more convenient for them. Obviously it's saving that energy, and obviously it's saving the travel, and I think it works both ways with the therapies as well. Obviously with it being group as well, so for us we can see more patients in that time, so it's just working brilliantly all round really. And if you just flick onto the last slide, our IT support's just put a little flag. It should play. I don't know if it'll work on here. There you go, little NROL flag.
Oh, I love it.
That's all Ian's doing that.
Personally, I think that this program is genius. I think that, you know, as a survivor myself, I've found that group support is so important to any sort of recovery, physical, mental, any aspect, it doesn't matter. So I think that like what you're doing, saving time, saving resources is just so genius. So I know you also have some patients on here. Tony and Michael, you guys are here?
Yes, I'm here.
How are you guys?
I'm fine.
How did you first learn about NROL and what influenced you to join the program?
You can blame Adam. He was my physiotherapist. After I'd had 2 strokes, and he asked me if I'd be interested in being involved, and I was very eager to have as much help as possible to explore any additional techniques that might have helped me recover and get stronger. So I bit his hand off.
Yeah, to try to do it. And what about you, Tony? Is Tony in here still? Did we lose him?
I think he's on mute. I think he's struggling to get mute off.
Oh no, I can see him here. Oh, you've got it on mute, Tony.
Okay. Right. I initially had speech therapy, and then I used to have one-to-one sessions. But then COVID came along, so it became online sessions with NROL. I used to go to like have one-to-one session with speech therapy, but they changed it to an online sessions.
Yeah. And how has NROL impacted your brain injury recovery? Do you feel like it's better?
Yeah, I really enjoyed NROL. There were other people on as well participating, and they could, like Adam said, we could share tips and stuff like that, and like ideas with other people. So I was not on my own, and I could see what they were doing as well, like today.
Yeah.
It really helped me. And my speech has come along. I think my speech has come along. Yeah.
What about you, Michael? How has it impacted you?
It's helped me in a number of ways. Initially, it was good because I wasn't getting too tired moving towards the physiotherapy department. I was then able to do the physical exercises. I still use some of them now. They've helped me particularly with my core stability. The fatigue sessions were very helpful, and they enabled me to identify the possible causes of fatigue and to plan for it, to recognize it when it was actually hitting me and to manage it. It seems like common sense when you look back on it, but having not been through that sort of situation before, I found these sessions very helpful and informative. So I know now if I've got a busy week coming up or a busy day, I can make sure that I don't overexert myself beforehand, and I can plan and set aside recovery time afterwards.
Yeah, I
So
think a
that was
lot of
very
survivors
helpful.
go through that. I think a lot of survivors they overestimate themselves that they'll recover quicker, and then they underestimate how long the process is going to take.
Oh, yes,
So,
yes,
so if this can help you and you don't overexert your energy to go somewhere, and then you end
yes,
up being able to actually work on yourself the right way,
yes,
it's a great thing, isn't it?
very much so. Yes, that was very, very helpful.
Yeah. And what advice would you give others going through their recovery?
Well, each of us are individuals. I think that's an important thing. None of us have experienced what others are going through, other survivors, other experiences. I wouldn't presume to be an expert on anything, but I can only highlight things that I've found useful. Firstly, I don't need to apologise for having had the strokes, but I sometimes need to explain why, for example, I need more space because my walking gait is wider than most people's. I've also found that I sometimes can't talk and start blubbing and crying at something that people would never do. And it's because my emotional expression control used to be like a tap, but now it's like a switch. It's not that people are uncaring and thoughtless, it just never occurs to them. When they understand our situation, they're generally very helpful. But my main advice to somebody would be keep looking forward. Look forward, reach for your aims, reach for those goals you'd like to achieve. Dwelling on what we were like beforehand leads to sadness and regret. We can't remove what's happened, so don't look back, only to see how far you've come. You never see the grass growing, you don't see a plant growing, a tree growing. It takes time, like you were saying before. Don't look back over a day, over a week, over a month to compare yourselves to what you are now. Look back over 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, more than a year, because it does take time. It can take a long, long time. Returning to what we were may not be possible in some cases, but we can still be encouraged by the recovery that we've made so far and reach for further improvement. That's what I'd say.
Wow, that's probably some of the best advice I've ever heard. That was brilliant. You got me all choked up, Mike. Tony, sorry to make you follow that, but tell me what you would say. What would you say?
I think
survivor?
Michael's right. I think Michael's right. You need to look forward. I really enjoy. I've had a brain tumor, by the way. I wear a badge and a lanyard that said I had a brain tumor, that I might have trouble with speech, I might be anxious and stuff like that. So I wear a brain tumor, but NROL was great. I was really apprehensive at first. I thought, how's it going to work? But I was used to like one-to-one involvement.
Yeah.
But the tutors really relaxed me, and I developed a good rapport with the tutors. I really enjoyed it, and I felt like I was there, even though it was on Zoom. I felt like I was there. I could see what everyone else was doing, so it was a great session. I must admit, I miss it.
Oh.
When he said by my session's finished, I was like, what? I can't be. But I'm always good, and I was really apprehensive at first, but I really liked it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys so much. That was honestly,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you guys came on this time.
Yeah.
That's just, it's a nice reminder as well of all the things to see physically and to hear physically that SameYou is doing, and not just we're telling you all these things that we're doing. We promise we're doing it. It's nice to hear from survivors and for you guys to tell us that it's really impacting you.
Very much so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Oh, that was excellent. So up next, guys, we have Aisha Holloway and Danny Kelly from the University of Edinburgh. Are they on here right now? Do we have them on yet?
Yes.
Yes,
There
yes,
they
we're
are.
here.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you guys?
We're fine. Well, we're in different parts of the country, but I'm okay. Danny, are you okay?
I'm okay.
You look like you're in space.
Well, I kind of thought this was a kind of reflective of where we're going with SameYou Global. I'm always, Jenny will laugh because that's what I'm glad, Danny, that's the only thing I keep talking about. We've got to spread this message globally. So I thought it was quite apt that I had that behind me today.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so we'll just get into it. So can you guys tell us about your post-grad training and share some of your thoughts from your first cohorts as nurses facing so much pressure at the moment right now?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to just start and give a wee bit of background to the program itself, and share with people what it is we've done here at the university. So we were approached, I think it's maybe 3 years ago now, to see if we could develop an educational program for nurses who were working already in practice in neuro rehab, and could we do it in a very short space of time? And that was our first challenge, because in universities, they take forever to do anything quickly. And it usually takes 18 months. And I went to them and I said, we need to do it in 4. And we did it in about 4.5, 5. So that was a first for the university. And we advertised these funded scholarships, which is hugely unusual for nurses to receive funding once they are out in practice as registered practitioners. And the program itself was a postgraduate program, so at master's level, and it comprised of 3 different courses. And each course ran over 10 weeks, 2 hours of lectures with tutorials, all online. So we were looking at nurses from all over the country, and we did have a couple of international nurses. So approximately 30 nurses, all at different stages of their career, but all really keen to undertake this development to improve patient care, to make a difference. So the courses consisted of a very focused neuro rehab course, specifically around caring for patients, what was going on physiologically, emotionally, psychologically, but really quite technical and very focused in that area. And our thinking of having that course as the first course was to really kind of hone in on what these nurses already knew, but how we could really extend their thinking, because what we tend to find is that sometimes it's really busy out in practice and people get on this kind of treadmill of just doing. And what we really want them to do as practitioners is be thoughtful practitioners, practitioners who themselves are able to self-reflect, self-care because of the emotional labor of caring for people in a holistic way. So nurses never treat a part of the body or a condition, they treat a whole person and their family. And they don't treat them, they engage with them. We want them to engage thoughtfully, person-centered care, driven by the needs of the family and the individual, and building a care plan around those needs. So that's what we're trying to do. And to do that, we really have to take people out of their comfort zone, challenge their thinking, and provide them with the latest research and evidence. So one of the great things we did was we engaged with some people that Jenny had kindly introduced us to in Australia and America, and we brought them in to support the education and learning. The next course we did was looking at the research evidence. How do we encourage practitioners to look at what is the latest evidence saying? What is the innovation that's out there? Are we at the cutting edge? And again, when you're in practice day to day, you don't get time to lift your head up to see, okay, what can we do differently? Where can we learn from other people? What are groups like SameYou saying? How can we bring them into the clinical setting and embrace that third sector community? So we did that. That was the course that they found the most challenging. And the one that they're like, well, what has that got to do with how I care for someone? And actually, that was probably the biggest transition for them in terms of their understanding of how they could lead changes in practice with other disciplines, where nursing usually was seen very as the quiet voice in a multidisciplinary team. What we found after the program in our evaluation, that these nurses were now going with research evidence, and they were saying, this is what's happening. I can understand this research, and I think, why are we not doing this? And then the third course was probably something quite transformational on an individual level for these nurses, because it was around person-centered care and emotions. And Danny might say a little bit more about that. And this course stemmed from one of our professors here, is Professor Pam Smith, who has done a huge amount of work around the emotional labour of caring and nursing. So we really come from a point of, how can you provide care for others if you don't understand how to care for yourself? So quite a bit of reflection, introspection, and understanding. Sometimes you just have to sit back and really think about what is best. Not what you think is best for someone, but what they think is best for themselves and what their priority is, and really listening to them. So listening to you, Michael and Anthony. Now, I mean, I was like you, Alex, I was getting very emotional there, because it's the power of giving voices to the people who are really at the center of this. And as healthcare professionals, sometimes I think we can fix people, and that's not what this is about. It's about living your best life. It's about giving you opportunities, and it's about clinicians advocating and enabling you to have a voice about what you want. So that was the third course we ran. And some of the things, I've just gone and looked at the evaluation where we did interviews with them. And I think the two key things that came out was, one, this was the first time they'd had an opportunity from when they did their training, where they did very general, education around this area, and they really dived into what's happening in this area, not just in the UK, but overseas. And then how they, as practitioners, can change what's going on in the clinical setting, and giving them skills, tools, knowledge, education, and a sense of confidence. That was a really important element that came through. So here we are thinking of these very competent practitioners, but actually they lacked a lot of confidence in their ability to bring change about. And some of that, I think, is, I mean, I'm a great supporter of really empowering clinicians, because I think nursing is an interesting profession. It doesn't often lead a lot of services traditionally, but actually we are the person. We've seen it in a lot of evidence, where we did a smaller piece of work with SameYou and RCNF around the digital stories of people who had been in recovery. And a lot of those stories were the nurse was this person who's with me most of the way on this journey. And that's a really privileged position to be in. And when you're given that space and trust and seeing people at their most vulnerable, you have to honor that. And I think that's the way we approach the education here in Edinburgh, that, we're not there to fix or make better, but we're there to, really embody that space that we're in with this individual on this journey. And whatever that takes, be the best clinician we can be to give the most excellent care that we can. And we're on our second cohort. And in fact, I just bumped in virtually to one of our nurses who's now stayed on to do a master's degree. And we've got a few of them. They've got the bug. They want to make change. They're now running journal clubs in their clinical area. They've got promotion. They're leading change. And actually, they're linking in with each other. What's happening in other clinical areas? They're listening as a group to each other, even after the program, and finding out, okay, you're doing that there, let's do that here. There's a long way to go, but it's interesting. You know, I don't know if you've ever bought a car or bought a coat or something, and you see everyone with that coat or that same car after you bought it. So what we have now is we just seem to have all these neuro nurses coming here, and they've suddenly sprung up. They're everywhere. It literally is amazing how many we have got connected. And I think that's what we need to do, create this group and expand that, because that critical mass, I think, is what will make the change and the difference. One person can't do it on their own. We can only do it together.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you for that. And Danny, how do you see the role of nurses supporting ABI recovery developing in the future? Like, how do you see that happening?
Well, the first thing I would say is I'm sorry I joined the call a little bit late, but I was really bowled over by hearing Michael and Anthony speak. I mean, that's your answer. That's the answer, is people need to live their best lives. And as Aisha said, so I think developing, we need some evidence of what people need. We need some hard evidence of how the services can best help people in this situation. And I think that given this pressure that all health systems are facing, I think we need to be able to argue not just from the heart about what people need, but also from the hard data. And so the projects that SameYou are supporting at Edinburgh are part of that jigsaw, and we will set out in this project to produce some direction for interventions that are evidence-based and can be used to help people in a real sense. And we've got a wonderful team of people working with us. I really have to say that, from across the 4 countries of the UK. And from clinicians, we've got service users, we've got so much goodwill in this team. And we're also building capacity in younger people, younger nurses, younger researchers, who will take this forward into the future, because that's so important. You know, it's about future thinking. And but I think, I don't know how much detail we need to share, but it's a program of work, I think, that needs to provide some of that hard data about what do people like Michael and Anthony need to help them lead a good life, a better life, and we all want to do that. So
yeah, that's
ultimately
what we want to do. What do they need statistically, but also what can we provide them with emotionally?
Yeah, and where the gaps are, you know.
Right.
My background is in cancer nursing, and I've spent my whole career looking at the needs of people with cancer, and I compare it to some of the people with neurological injury or deficits, and we need much more attention, I think, on those services and the interventions and when people need them most, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree. One little tiny question for both of you. Why do you both feel that it's so difficult for young people to recover from acute brain injury, for younger survivors?
Well, I'll just jump in quickly. I mean, when life is at its fullest and the future lies ahead, the last thing we expect is to face these situations. And I think it's harder because of, I heard Michael say something about feeling guilty about having stroke. I think that's a big issue for me, is that when people might feel somehow, why me? Why has this happened to me? What have I done to deserve this? So I think it is different for young people, and also they have a long life to live, and we are interested in how to help them to do that.
Yeah, Michael said, you need to stop apologizing. You can stop apologizing. And I think that was like what really resonated with me. I know that a lot of young survivors feel like their bodies failed if that makes sense. They feel
Yeah.
like they failed and their bodies failed them. So then they can't really wrap their heads around it. I know that was my biggest thing. What do you think, Aisha? Do you think that, like, why do you feel it's so difficult for people to recover from this? Young people, especially. Oh, did we lose her?
That is a
There
big
she is.
question. That's a big question.
It is.
That's
It's the
a
young
big question.
survivors.
And I mean, certainly what we know from the evidence, from the stories, from our digital stories, I think it's the sudden shock. A bit like when you're young, invincible, and then suddenly this thing comes that actually not many people realize this happens to young people. We still live in an age of, this is for very old people, it happens to, I hear about it, I don't see it. We can't visualize what this looks like. The embodiment of what this means for a young person is not something we're presented with. And it's not something we talk about or we see. It's a really hidden, invisible,
Disease.
but significant issue that is out. It's almost like we've got to make the invisible visible.
Yes.
And that's what's happening. So I think there's that context of it, that this personal thing that's happening that we just haven't seen before, understood before, but it does happen. And you know, the numbers are significantly higher than we imagine. The impact is significantly different at different stages in the journey. And this is the thing also. Older people now live fulfilling lives. This idea of being old, you know, at like 50, that's gone. So it's a whole reframing and understanding. We have to put on a different pair of glasses and look at this through a different lens now. And I think we need to do that in lots of conditions, but in this one particularly because of the invisibility of it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I think is society and how society labels and puts labels on everything and likes to kind of put people into boxes and not you're herd together. I think as well, you're this, you're labeled as this, and this is what this must mean. But I think what we're hearing, even from Michael and Anthony, is everyone's story is individual. Mm-hmm. There are themes, there are commonalities, but everybody's, and we can empathize, but everybody's journey is a different journey. You might end up at the same place at a different place. However, understanding as a young person what that is going to look like, and I would say not even just for a young person, I think the needs are different because some people have families, children, they're working age, there's some very practical things. But I guess when you're looking, you can't, it's a bit like Michael said, it's not a day at a time, it's 3 months, it's 6 months. But I think for young people, because we're just not set up to meet their needs, that what that looks like, even for clinicians, I think is difficult because that service system infrastructure doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm. It's just not expected. I know when I was in hospital, I was the youngest one, and I was the second youngest person was I think they were 69, and I was in a ward, and nobody could even remotely relate, and the nurses were incredible, but they couldn't understand.
No, I think
have understood.
This is it. It does require, I mean, you know, you get this idea in nursing about specialisms and non-specialisms, but I think there's a general awareness raising that has to happen at a general level. And also, I think this does require some specialist expertise. Because yes, I completely agree with what you're saying. And do you know what was a really strong sense to me when people described when the symptoms, the onset of symptoms, and I think these things stay with you. And people not believing them, people thinking there was something else going on with them. They were either making it up, they were on drugs. And it was almost that time, that really important time of when this was happening to them.
Yep.
And it wasn't being addressed, responded to. And that seemed to stick with people in their minds.
I think
so the early message you're getting is you're not validated. And if that's what you get at the very beginning, how does that work as you go through this journey, this process? I mean, it's just, it's overwhelming, I would imagine.
It is. And hopefully with all the work that you guys are doing, we can slowly, you know, find the research through experience, through data, that it's enough for young people.
And do you know what, can I just do a plug for this great phrase that somebody called Jim Campbell uses at the WHO about data, dialogue, decision making. And then he talks about the dollar investment, and that's what we need. We need stories because they are emotional and they work well with the hard data. So we need to bring these both together. That gives us something to take as evidence to facilitate the dialogue with the people who can make decisions. And then the decisions are made and we want investment. This is not a cost, this is an investment. Because if we let people and enable people to live their best lives, they are contributing to society. And that's what we have to have that shift. So data, dialogue, decision-making, investment.
Oh, I like that. Oh, thank you both so much for coming on. We're kind of at the end of the webinar, everybody. Thank you all again so much just for joining. A very special thank you, obviously, to our partners at Spaulding, UCLan, ELHT, and the University of Edinburgh for joining us and for sharing more about your work. This is all so important, and it's so great to hear actually from your mouth specifically and not us regurgitating the information, and we really appreciate you guys coming on. We hope you all have found this very useful. None of this would ever be possible without your generosity. So please let us know what you think about our programs, and please keep following SameYou and sharing what we do with your friends and family. Thank you so much to Jenny, our CEO. Thank you for being here, for explaining it all to us. And yes, please keep sharing, please keep donating, and please keep spreading the word of SameYou. I think that's our most important cause, that we can spread as much knowledge about this unbelievable organization as possible and get the word out there and hopefully continue to do these life-saving things that we are doing right now. So thank you all so much. Thank you for being here. We'll see you all so soon. See you at the next one next year, 5 years. See you guys. Thank you so much.